Turn lower. They don't know it yet.
Good morning, everyone.
Yeah, exactly.
Grab your coffee, grab your water, get settled in. Can I just say, this is an energizing, good-looking group of people right here, huh? And that includes our virtual friends too. So good morning to our virtual friends. We've got nearly 100 people joining us online this morning as well. This is just wonderful. Thank you all so much for being here and welcome. My name is Rana DeBoer. I am the Chief Impact Officer with Keystone Group International. And we are a group of business guides who help you design and execute on exceptional workplace cultures. And there's more to that, right? It's also about developing those great leaders who drive and sustain exceptional workplace cultures. So I want to share with you that one of the reasons I joined Keystone Group is a core value of give. And it isn't just give, it's actually give, 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 get. Because you get what you give, right? You put that good positive energy out into the world and that's what you get back. So not only for me personally, but also for Keystone, it's really important that we have a great relationship with our community, right? Businesses have almost an obligation, if you will, to give back into the community because that is a win-win situation. So today is a little bit about that give. Yes, it's about a give on helping us really have a good conversation on a really important topic in our business community, in our business environment, and that is workplace culture. So thankful to have this incredible lineup of business leaders to share knowledge, wisdom, and insights with us. So thank you guys for giving your time and for giving on all that knowledge that you have to share. So let me introduce our panelists. To the very end, we have Tim McCarthy, who is president of Sioux Valley Energy. Next to him is Becky Word, who is chief of staff with Lloyd Companies. Next is Joe Krazan, president, founder of Omnitech. And right next to me, Kira Kimball, who is chief diversity, equity, and inclusion officer for Marsh McLennan. So if we could also recognize and appreciate our relationship with Southeast Tech. So let's give a quick round of applause to say thank you to our panelists and to Southeast Tech. All right, let's get started, right? Let's get started. And I think a good place for us to begin this really meaningful culture conversation would be around what is culture, right? Sometimes it's confusing. It's this big ambiguous thing that you can't quite touch or feel, but you know that it's really important. And sometimes we think it's complex and confusing. So what really is it? Kira, how about you start us out? What is culture?
Sounds great, Rana. Thanks so much for having me here this morning. How many of you have maybe gone snorkeling or scuba diving, or if you haven't, like me, maybe you have a fish tank? And when we think of the water in those spaces, we can't really see the water. We feel the water. We see the fish, we see the algae floating, maybe some other plants that are in there, but we don't see the water. But the water is critical for those ecosystems to be successful and to function. And that's a lot how culture really is in our workplaces. It's how it feels when we go into that workplace, whether we're a team member or a client or a center of influence. It's also how we get stuff done around that workplace and how it feels when we do that, how it feels when we interact with one another. So it really underlines how a business functions, not in terms of its top priorities to do the work of the business, but really how it feels to move through it.
Water. Honestly, that's a really good analogy because you can't, it's what's all wrapped around you. Kira, that's awesome. Joe. give us your perspective. Let's hear it.
First of all, thank you, Rana, for asking me to be part of this. So culture is defined as a set of predominant attitudes and behaviors that characterizes a group of people, right? So how does that apply to a workplace? Well, I think a culture manifests itself in a couple ways. One is it's those things that people outside your company identify about your company, right? And then it's those things that people on your team identify with by being on your team. And there needs to be some synergies with that. So for the culture to be thriving and successful and progressing, the people on your team that are part of that culture need to be contributing to it. And they're only able to do that if there are synergies between what they sense your culture is and those values and attitudes and behaviors that they identify with in themselves and in their own personal lives. So they're either contributing to the culture's success or they're maybe detracting from it because those synergies don't exist.
That's really good. I love that word synergy too. It's true. It's that synergy between who we are as individuals and the synergy of that organization. And when those get aligned, right, that's when we get this energy and this power and this momentum. Tim or Becky, anything you want to add to that definition of culture? We did a pretty good job. Like we nailed it.
Pretty well.
Nailed it. We totally nailed it. At Keystone, I just have to share this, that we use this definition of culture is the way that we think, act, and interact. And that's completely what you guys really just described. So how are we creating the conditions in that work environment where we're kind of guiding the way of how we're thinking, staying positive, how we're interacting, and then that's really how we become and how we perform. Well, without question, culture's always been an important topic, right? We've been talking about it for at least a decade, and I feel like we've grown in understanding what is culture and what does it really mean. And man, has it been emphasized the last 2 years? Yes, very much so. So this is a big and important topic in business today. So Tim, would you maybe share with us some thoughts about, what does culture mean for business today? What does it mean for us today, like right now?
Sure. And again, like everyone else, I want to thank you for having me here today, and thank you all for coming this morning. When I think of culture in the organization, what it means, culture really means everything in the organization. It permeates every aspect of your business. Every business has a culture. Not every business has a good culture. At SVE, we have a very simple mission statement. Our mission is serving our members always. And my job and the job of my leadership team is to make sure we construct an environment that encourages our employees to not only know our mission, but to feel it in their hearts. It's our job to invoke passion. And what we call our consumers members in the cooperative world. For ease of discussion here, I'm gonna call them customers today as we go through this conversation. But if you don't build a culture that your employees can buy into and in which they're actively engaged and feel like they're a part of it, they're not going to be satisfied in their workplace. And I'm telling you right now, unsatisfied employees do not produce satisfied customers.
Boom, mic drop. Well said.
Random thought.
Yeah, love it. Well said. Becky, what would you add to that?
Well, I too want to thank you for having me here. I really feel your culture is a make or break for a company. It's how you're going to draw and retain your talent. And it's truly the foundation of everything that you're doing. People want to have a sense of belonging, and in that culture is where they're going to have that sense of belonging. And the truth is, and Tim mentioned it, you're going to have sabotagers once in a while in that culture, and you do need to address that. Because if they're in your culture and you're not addressing that and dealing with it, you know, like misery loves company. I think that's how that saying goes. I'm not really good at sayings, but I think that's how that one happens to go. But you really need, I guess we've really found, and I used to take it so personal if someone wasn't fitting in our culture. And I would think, gosh, what are we doing wrong? And I would just take it so personal. And then after a while, I realized maybe it's just, they just don't fit our culture. They don't fit who we are. And there is another culture somewhere that they fit into, and they need to go find that one. And they're going to feel like they belong there, because if they're not feeling that they belong at Lloyd, they probably belong somewhere else. And that's okay.
Yeah, it is okay. Yeah, that is definitely okay. And what a great point, because culture isn't a one size fits all. Like each one of you have your own unique cultures. And then think about it too, when you guys break down into your teams, into your they have their own little subcultures, right? So every culture, every little team, that's as unique as our fingerprints. And so it's not a one size fits all. We really try to talk with organizations and companies about that, because they ask us a lot of questions like, what is right? What's the right way to do it? Well, the right way to do it is the right way you do it. So I challenged the panelists to a little homework as they stepped into this conversation. And it was for them to try to synthesize down and describe their culture in 3 words. So hard, right? Some of you were like, Brianna, are you kidding me? This is mission impossible. But who would like to kick us off? Like, what are those 3 words that really came to you when you think about what best describes our culture, and then help us know why? Tim, go. Yep.
Well, Rana, like every good leader, when you assigned me homework, I quickly delegated that homework. And I asked my leadership staff to, we haven't done a cultural assessment for a while, and we're getting ready to, and I'll talk more about that a little later. But, you know, I asked them just to have some discussions and see what feedback that we received today, because we've gone through a difficult period the last couple of years, and it's changed things about culture. And so when they came back, I was very pleasantly surprised to find that those 3 words really hadn't changed much from where the things we were trying to do and establish. They came back trusting, collaborative, and empowering. And the why, I really think those cultural attributes, they all drive our success in accomplishing our mission and our organizational objectives. And they're also, they're just imperative components to the single most important stone in our foundation, which is safety.
Thank you.
All right. So this last year, I challenged myself to meet with, it was all the employees that were hired prior to 2021. And so I had 177 people to meet with face to face, and I did it. So it was a huge challenge, but I asked them, part of my conversation with them is, you know, what do they love about the Lloyd culture? So this was really hard for me just to narrow it down, because there were so many words, but there was words that were definitely resonated and that were repetitive. And number 1 was fun. They like the fun that we have at work. The other one was respect. They feel respected, and that there's a lot of trust that happens within, that they're empowered to do what they need to do, and therefore they feel that trust and respect is there. The last one is the people. They love their coworkers. They love the family feel, and they really, you know, I kept asking them they could pinpoint, you know, what is that family feel? And that's what you guys talk about. It's just a feeling. There's nothing particular that's happening. It's just a feeling. And I just have to tell one little story. But so in these meetings, I met with some employees that had been with us for a year, and some of them were, you know, they were in their late 50s, early 60s, seeing this as their last place of employment before they retire. And they said to me, many people said this to me. This was, and I'm not trying to brag, but I'm just saying that they said this is the best place they've ever worked. And that made me feel so good. But at the flip side, I felt so bad, because I'm thinking, what's going on out there? Like, it took them this long to find a place where they actually felt happy and they belonged. and so I didn't really know how to react to them at times, but I told them I'm so happy that they're here with us now, and that I hope that they can help just build off that culture. So
That's awesome. That's awesome. And it's incredible what your people tell you, isn't it? Like if we as leaders aren't asking these types of questions, you can't get to or know what's happening, right? You have to ask these questions. It's so insightful. Joe, what's your 3 words?
Well, this was tough, right? We talked about this, the panelists, before this event started, that this topic in itself is very broad and very deep, and we can talk about it for hours. And so to drill it down into 3 words is difficult, but I chose 3, humility, learning, and family. And for Omnitech, that means those all mean something. And so humility, first of all, when people talk about what does it take to be successful at Omnitech, one of the things I tell them is you've got to you need to want to be part of something bigger than yourself, and you need to be able to check your egos at the door, because we've assembled some of the most talented engineers in the region. And they range in their tenure in their careers from college graduates up to, 20 plus years in industry. And so we need to make sure that everyone is humble enough to learn from each other, right? So you might be learning something that you've never knew before from a college graduate, even though you've been in industry for 25 years. So that humility is really important to us. And then that segues into the learning. The kind of people that we're wanting to have on our team are always wanting to continue to learn. And so we have a learning culture. We invest a lot in our people, as most companies do. And then that segues into family. Obviously we're a for-profit business, so that always has to resonate in some way, shape, or form. But family in the sense that how we feel about each other. Everybody on our team legitimately cares about each other and wants them to be successful, and we have each other's backs, and there's no backstabbing, and there's none of that. There's no wall silos of knowledge. We break those down because everybody understands that if I know something, it helps the company and everyone else in it if I teach it to you. And so there's that organic knowledge share, and caring about each other like a family.
That is awesome. I think that you can hear the care. You can hear care in everything that's been said so far. Each of you have brought that culture is about caring for people. Safety, Tim, is about caring for people at the end of the day, that you genuinely care. And like you said, Becky, you care so much that maybe this isn't the place for you to be the most successful. And maybe there is somewhere else that you can be more successful. And when we really care, we do check that ego at the door, right? Like it's not about me, it's about we. And then your culture starts to even graduate with this way that we're thinking, acting, and interacting, and it moves from we to us. And that's a whole nother level of commitment. And that's a whole nother level of personal and business flourishing. Outstanding. Kira?
I love this conversation because what I'm finding as the last person to get to talk about it, we have similarities throughout, and maybe we're figuring out some of the tenets of really good cultures, because I hope that we have a really good culture at Marsh McLennan Agency. But to what Rana is saying, we consider ourselves to be employee-centered in our decision-making. And that adds to flexibility, that adds to seeing someone beyond their role as a salesperson or account executive. They might be a parent, they might be an aunt, they might be an athlete, whatever that means. We want to create space for all of those identities to show up. And the way we make decisions, the last couple of years about our business has really centered on the employees. Back to what one of you said, I can't remember who said it, but I think it may have been you, Tim, that satisfied employees, engaged employers are going to do good work for us. And we knew that the last couple of years, we particularly had to double down on being very employee centric in how we make decisions. Secondly, we've got a permission giving spirit in our organization. And if I narrowed that down to one word and followed the assignment, I would use empowerment. That we want to give our team members the opportunities to try new things, take risks, grow in different ways. We recognize that there are multiple paths to success, and that there's not a lot of rigidity in how we get work done, because we want to honor the talents and gifts of all of our team members, recognizing they might go about our business in different ways. So we're excited to give people opportunities to take risks, to fail fast, to succeed exponentially, and to learn from that. And then finally, growth mindset. And that continuous learning that some of my colleagues up here have mentioned, because that really engages individuals, that they know this isn't all I'm going to learn. I'm going to continue to grow as a person, and that my organization is interested in investing in my talents and gifts and helping me see a career trajectory. I may be hired here, but MMA helped me get somewhere else. So we're really committed to investing in our team members' gifts and talents so they can drive. And one of the things I love about our organization is that we offer stretch projects. So maybe in my firm, we are risk management and employee health and benefits consulting outfit. And so I might be in employee health and benefits, but there could be a stretch project, maybe in the marketing department, or I get to learn something different about business insurance. And those are made accessible to our team. So if I'm hungry for learning and I want to try something new, I can sign up for a stretch project and develop new behavior skills, meet new people, and be invested in a different way. And I think that continuous learning is something that you feel when you come into our organization.
You know, you've all talked about learning and growth. And Joe, you and I were talking and Becky, we were talking just a little bit about before the panel that we're never done with this work of culture. There's no end to it. It's just a continuous learning, continuous growing, continuous moving. And that means us as leaders, we really have to keep growing. And Korn Ferry is a group that I follow. I just love their work. They're an organizational development and leadership development group. And they have coined that the number one competency for a leader in 21st century business is learning agility. We have to keep flexible, keep learning, keep growing, keep moving. And when you match that with the care piece that we've talked about in terms of culture, we're really talking about something kind of personal. Like there's a personal piece to this whole culture work and leading it forward and leading it well. So Tim, on that note, if you would share with us just a little bit about why is this work of culture important to you personally?
Well, to me personally, I look back on my career and I think about when I came into my first professional position in the utility world. And I've been in the utility world 34 years now. And I remember coming in and it was kind of like, welcome aboard. Here's your desk, sit down, shut up. Here's what you're supposed to do. And I kind of looked around and everything was command and control. Utility industry is historically very command and control. And it's only changed really in the last 20 years or so. But it just, to me, where I became interested in really trying to build a positive culture is when I saw what a negative culture does to people, how it demoralizes people, and how it they come into the workplace, they're excited, they got a new job, I'm with this new organization, and 6 months later you talk to them, and it's like, you kind of commented, maybe they're not right for the culture, but under command and control, I'm not sure anybody is, because they're so demoralized after 6 months. And the other thing that I saw was that when you don't have an open culture and you don't encourage people to grow and you don't develop people and you don't encourage them to be engaged and involved in the business, you leave so much talent laying on the table. And I always say this, and people look at me like, that sounds ridiculous. But I always said, if I had my own company and I could design it any way I wanted, we would have organizational objectives and we would not have a single title in that company. And we would work towards the objectives. We'd hire for talent that we need, and we'd hire for attitude. We'd hire for the skill sets we need. But beyond that, no titles. Here's our objective. Here's what we're trying to achieve. And then everyone's involved. And when you let employees be involved, and you let them help develop the organization and the way the organization works, you have immediate buy-in. They're invested because they help build it. And so for me personally, you know, that was my motivation at a very young age to say, I know I can remember having a discussion with one of my bosses and they said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to shape something. And it wasn't like I want to sell electricity. Guys, that's not exciting. It kind of happens on its own. You just got to make sure it's flowing out there. And, you know, in our business, the product isn't any different than Excel's product. What differentiates us is service and culture. That's what differentiates us, not our product. So from a personal level, I didn't know if you wanted me to talk about the most important thing for leaders right now. I can certainly do that. But for me personally, that's
good.
it.
Let's come back to the leader one. So what if we did that, you guys? What if we did what Tim just said? We would blow up the whole business world. There are no titles anymore. There's only just this clear direction. This is what we need to do. You go figure it out and make the magic happen. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Everybody looks at me like I'm crazy when I say it.
I bet they do. Like totally crazy. Are you kidding me? But when you really think about the impact that could have, that's game-changing thinking. Boom. Becky, what would you add?
You know, for me personally, I'm an employee too, just like the rest. And so, you know, I want to work for a company that, yeah, I'm feeling fulfilled when I go to work every day, just like them. I want to go to work every day where I feel respected, where I feel heard, where I feel like I'm contributing just like them. And so I've just made that, you know, personally for me, you know, something that I knew that in my role in the company that I could play a part in this and helping, you know, shape this for everybody. And so I just, and it's so passionate for me. It's just natural for me, you know, to want to do that. But, and then, you know, you also are, you mentioned this, but your culture and all of these things that you're doing, that is your secret sauce. There are other electric companies out there. There are other construction and property management companies out there, but the only thing that's ours is our culture. That's the only thing no one else can replicate. It's ours. And people need, and that's how they identify. That's, you know, so anyway, that's for me. I mean, it's just that simple. I want to share with them what I want as well, because I feel like it's just that connection.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Joe, what would you add?
Why culture is personal to me is it kind of goes back to some 24, 25 years ago when Omnitech was just getting started. My partners and I, our families were young. So we had young kids, and it was important for us. We didn't miss any of our family stuff. We went to all the ball games and parent teacher conferences and doctor appointments. And that just became just something that we did. Well, then as the company grew and we started to build our team, we started hiring people who were moms and dads. And it became readily apparent that being engaged in your family with your family life is not an owner privilege, it's a mom and dad privilege. So it became cornerstone of our culture that has evolved over the years, and it remains that, you know, we are a family first business model, and that's important because as I tell people when I get a chance to speak to them about this, is what we do between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. really is kind of the details. But the truly important stuff happens between 5 p.m. and 8 a.m. And so we really try to emphasize that. And we never want any of our team to find themselves in a position where they're asking a question of, should I be at work or should I be with family? And I think that kind of accentuates what we have. So it's personal to me because it started with me, and I can relate to it.
Absolutely. And so you guys are really talking about, I mean, think about this. This is the leadership team at the very top of the business. And this is the mindset and the thinking. Think about how that permeates down and through the rest of the organization for all of your people. Every single person. Talk about human centric, right, Kira? So I think it would be great to, how do you do this? That's the hard part, is how do you do this? How do you do it? So there's a personal piece to this, and it's really about caring for people. And when we do that, the business will flourish. That's just a natural relationship, right? Like it just comes. So Kira, will you share with us a little bit about, so as a leader, how do we make this happen? Who do we need to be, and how do we need to be as leaders to make this go?
We've been called as leaders in organizations to humanize our businesses like no other time in workplace history. The last couple of years have really driven me as a leader, to be reflective of how I show up, and showing up with empathy and compassion, and leading with those characteristics, learning them if we don't know them, is really critical for culture building right now in the world that we're in. And so that's something that I invest in developing in myself. I model the compassion and empathy for other leaders so they can learn what that looks like, but really being able to see our team members through a lens, not just of their role, as I mentioned before, but a bigger picture. And when we think about career well-being and our overall well-being, that is so critical. And culture so much feeds into how we feel about our careers. And when we go back home, to Joe's point, the 5 p.m. to the 8 a.m., when we feel that we're tied to purpose, helping our team members see their role in driving success in our organization, and our role as leaders in helping them see themselves as successful and fulfilling their potential, living into their best gifts and talents, that's leadership responsibility. That we help an individual identify where those gifts and talents are, and we pour into them so that we can help them, again, live into their potential, but to be able to use those to help the business succeed. So I think showing up as humans, as leaders, beyond the titles that maybe we don't necessarily need, is exactly what organizations need right now.
Yeah. There's the how, in the how piece about owning who we are and how we're showing up and role modeling as leaders. That can be hard some days. Tim, I think you had a couple great pieces you were going to add to what do we need to be and what do we need to do as leaders to keep this momentum and energy and culture moving forward?
Yeah. You know, when I think of that question, there's so many things I could say, but I think about what we've done at Sioux Valley, and I think the two most important things that I have to do as a leader is the first, I've got to define a vision. I got to define a compelling vision that people can buy into. Employees need to understand the why. You know, what is my purpose? What am I actually contributing to? And they need to find that sense of purpose to truly connect to the organization and to our customers. They need to feel like they're valued, and they need to feel like what they do matters. To do this, you know, they need to have a clear picture of what the organization's trying to accomplish, what our objectives are, and how they impact that. And at Sioux Valley, we do that through, and you all may have heard of this tool, maybe you use it, but it's called a balanced scorecard. It's a pretty easy visual that helps you define your organizational objectives to anyone, not just your employees, but anyone looking at your business from the outside. They can understand fairly quickly what you're about, what you're trying to accomplish. You know, and one example of an objective on that scorecard is at Sioux Valley, we want to be in the first quartile nationally in electric reliability. And, you know, when you say that to a lineman, your brother Paul, you want to say that to Paul, I say, well, Paul, I want you to be in the first quartile nationally. You know, Paul probably look at me and think that's a pretty abstract concept. I'm not sure how in the world I can make that happen. Well, you know, when you think of it that way, it does seem pretty large. When you start breaking it down and you say, you know, when you go out and you perform initiatives like line patrol, like pole inspections, the way we respond to outages, involving our linemen in discussions of our line build specifications, those type of things, and the things they do daily, and then draw that line to the objective. Now you start to draw a line of sight for those employees by addressing those initiatives that they do every day and showing them how those impact that overall goal. Those pieces all stack up to impact that goal of us being in the top quartile nationally in reliability. The second, I think leaders need to have a mindset to serve first and lead second. Frankly, we just need to let go sometimes, which isn't that hard for me, because if my leadership staff would tell you I'm pretty ADD. If I see a shiny object, I'm on to the next topic. But, Joe said it best, and I look at leaders across the industry, and this frustrates me, you get in one of these roles, they drop a title on you, and suddenly an ego comes out of nowhere, and it's this monster. And it can destroy some leaders before they even have a chance to do good things. So as leaders, I think it's vastly important that we remember, drop those egos. We don't need them. We've got 109 employees at Sioux Valley. I guarantee you that collectively, they're way, way, way smarter than me. And we need to recognize that, and we need to utilize their talents. I talked earlier about leaving talent on the table. If we've got a problem and we're sitting around the table and we're scratching our heads, I don't care if it's the janitor that walks by and looks over our shoulder and goes, I'd do this. And we go, yeah, that's a pretty good idea. And you don't see that in a lot of organizations. A lot of times that person would be told, you need to worry about your job, let us worry about ours. That needs to end in organizations. Leaders need to trust their employees. They need to let them be involved in shaping the organization. One quick example I'll give, and then I'll shut up, but we redid our mission statement at Sioux Valley. We had a pretty innocuous mission statement, and I wanted something that would evoke more passion, but also something employees could actually remember, and it would mean something to them. So to do that, I mentioned earlier, you need to get buy-in, and to do that, they need to be involved in creating that vision and that mission. So when we changed our mission statement, we took it to the employees. I asked my leadership team, go talk to your coaches, and I asked the coaches, go talk to your employees, and they came back with about four or five different options for a mission statement. And then we let the employees vote on which one they thought was really our true mission. And then that's what we took to the board to have the discussion of, we really think this is our mission. And it came out serving our members always. And again, I think it's a perfect mission because electricity is electricity, guys. Service is what's going to separate you.
Well said, Tim. You're all hitting on what we talk about at Keystone is conscious leadership, right? Really conscious leadership, where you're aware of who you are and who you're being and what you're driving and the energy that you're putting out to your team and how you're empowering your team to be conscious as well. Conscious leadership. It's so huge and it's so hard because it's so busy. There's so many things going on. But conscious leaders really lean into their people and empower them to lift up and go. And if I'm hearing you guys right, like you're saying, it starts with me. It starts with me at the top. And when I role model it, like you said, and I define that this is the way our culture is going to be, and this is how we're going to do it, then so be it. That's what happens. So we always kind of use this definition too of you can't do what you don't define. Have you guys heard that before? Such a great statement. You can't do what you don't define. And so you're defining what great leadership looks like and what a great culture looks like. So Joe, let's keep going on the how piece, because I think you've got a pretty incredible story here to tell the group, but you've kind of cracked the code on this. How we recruit, how we hire, and how we retain people, which you guys, that's a big deal today, right? We've got a war on talent for sure. We've got a war on talent. So we would love to hear how you do this at Omnitech. And you've been doing this for a long time too, before we hit where we are today in terms of the business environment. So
Yeah, so 20 some 5 odd years ago, when Omnitech was started, you know, in the early years, we didn't realize we had a culture. We didn't identify that that was a thing. We had a culture, we just didn't identify or understand what that meant. And so as we were growing, we would obviously bring people on our team. We would post positions, we would interview, we would add people to our team. We were always, it was very transactional. We were identifying skill sets that we needed, and we'd match those up with candidates who had those skill sets, and we would bring people on our team. And we were finding that over the course of 10 or 12 years, that was mildly successful, that we would have talented people that wouldn't fit in our culture, right? So we tried a lot of different methods to try to solve for that. And then we finally identified that that was our problem. We were hiring for talent, but we weren't hiring for culture. And both are important. So once we realized that that was important and both boxes needed to be checked, we made a pretty bold move. And I'm lucky to have some of my team members in the audience here, but about 10 years ago, we decided that we needed to do something, and it took us a couple of years to kind of evolve that thought. But we decided that we were going to take our recruiting efforts inside. And this was really bizarre and unheard of for a company of, at the time, 30, 35 people to have a dedicated internal person for recruiting. But we took a lady on our team who'd been with us for 7 or 8 years, knew our culture, knew our company, knew our business model and our core beliefs. And she'd been in the sales position. And we told her, we need you to now sell the company instead of selling our services. And so she did just that. And so for the last 7 or 8 years, we've evolved a hiring process that has been described by several people as being very intense. We identify skills that match up. So we check that box first.
Yep.
And once we identify that there's skill sets to continue to talk about or talk to this person about, we invite those people back for follow-up interview conversations 2, 3, sometimes 4 times. And we invest a lot in our candidates, whether it's a college intern or an industry professional. And that's very purposeful, because everyone can put on their A game for a half hour or an hour interview. But what we determined was these extra contacts that, and over the course of those 3 or 4 visits, this candidate might meet with 10 or 12 or more of our team in one-on-one conversation settings. Maybe we go to lunch with a group of people, and that just runs its course. At the end of that process, we all huddle. Everyone who's had interaction with those candidates, we huddle, and we have discussion about if we feel that they're a good fit for our culture. And anybody at the table can veto a hire. And we have vetoed hires that were 1 vote short of unanimous from bringing on our team. And I think over the years, I think it's fair to say we've missed out on some good candidates because of that. But I think we've also maybe avoided some mismatches with our culture as a result. And there's a couple things that does. For the candidate, by the time they get invited onto our team, they feel like they're part of something pretty special, because not just everybody gets invited to the Omnitech party. But they also know 12 or 14 of our people, so they don't feel new. So they're immediately acclimated into our culture. From our existing team's perspective, even if they weren't part of the interviewing group, there's an immediate acceptance of new people into our culture, because they've all been through it and they know that it's not easy. You don't just show up and it just happens. There's a process. And so it's a upfront intense investment in people, but it is proven effective because we end up with better fits in our.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to join the Omnitech party. Can I join the Omnitech party? I don't know if I'd cut it. I'm not sure I'd make the cut.
Well, I've often said this, that, that it's a pretty competitive arena, and I'm glad I got in when I got in.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt.
Because I don't think I'd make the
You
cut.
might not make it. You might not make it
But to
today.
put things in perspective, and this is just, amazing, the work that my team has done. So we have a very extensive internship process as
Oh.
well. So we bring on, for the last handful of years, we have 6 interns a summer. And it's a 2-year process, and we're actually grooming them, to become full-time employees,
Yeah.
right? But just to put things in perspective, it's routine that for those 6 positions, we have between 120 and 140.
Wow.
applicants.
That's amazing.
And these are coming from, the top area schools. So, that goes back to, the culture is something that people outside your company identify about you. Engineers who want to rocket propel their careers, they want to come to us.
Yeah.
But that's about culture.
So that's a powerful process and intensive. And I can imagine when I heard that story for the first time, I thought, not every organization can go through that much work to get people into the right. So, but wow, what wisdom we can kind of glean from that, and talk about, you can't do what you can't define. Like, you're defining and you're creating a special community in place for your people to thrive and flourish and do their best. That's amazing. So Becky, I'm going to turn to you next, because as chief of staff, you are head of all of these moving parts in an organization, right? You're intersecting a bunch of moving pieces, and one of your roles is staffing plans, right? That's a big piece of what we have happening kind of in this war on talent. What's important for us to be thinking about today? What are some things you could share with us that are the secret sauce, if you will, to some of your success?
Well, there's so many things, obviously, and with culture, it's not a box checking exercise. But one of the things that we started probably really intensely 3 years ago was realizing that if we wanted a great client experience, it started with having an excellent employee experience. And so we made huge investments in this, and it started with what you mentioned, the leaders. So the first thing we did is, we were sending people out for leadership training all over, sending people everywhere, and maybe they'd get a nugget that they'd bring back, and they'd incorporate that in their little, team, but the next team was doing something different. So we focused on that and brought all of our leadership training in-house. And so that we had that consistency of when we had an employee start, or we had current employees even transferring to different departments, they were getting the same experience. It wasn't something so different and sometimes so disappointing, but so anyway, we focused on leaders. Then we focused on, from there in that training, was about the culture, the employee experience, how we're going to treat employees, what we're expecting from that, how we're going to build upon our culture. And we just kept massaging that, kept working on that. And in the and along with that, then all of a sudden we started, bringing in the client experience piece. So then, because if you have happy employees, if your employees are having a great experience, they're way more likely then to deliver a great client experience. In all that, so we're doing this knowing that's how we're going to retain and attract, right? Is the word on the street. What's it like to be at Lloyd? Marketing. So really, truly, a key advantage that you need to do is marketing. The talent war is about marketing. So we started using social media as a way to say our story. What is it like to work at Lloyd? It wasn't just focusing on marketing to potential renters, potential businesses that want us to build something for them, potential investors.
Yeah.
We were marketing to people saying, hey, this is the environment you would want to work. This is what it means to work at Lloyd. And so a lot of things we do is around that. And we really encourage too, we love to have our employees refer people, and we really enhanced our employee referral program a lot.
Yeah.
And put true dollars. We were paying headhunters at times $30,000 to fill a position. Well, why don't we give $10,000 to an employee?
Yeah.
That's helping us fill a position.
Yeah.
So there's a whole bunch of things that we've done.
Yeah.
But it's really working. Last year in 2021, we added 60 brand new positions to Lloyd. Hired over 120 employees, so brand new titles and added new team members. And it was a great, I can't believe, I mean, that was a record. I mean, we just blew up in 2021 and it looks like 2022 is going to be the same. So we can't stop. We have to continue to do this. And that's, attracting that talent is huge, but retaining it's even bigger.
I love it. They're your brand advocates, right? I mean, Joe, you and Becky, you're both talking about this, bringing it in-house and really defining who are we, what do we stand for? And then just really talking about that. To have a lineup of interns who want to be a part of the Omnitech party, and then to have all of your people just out there talking about this is why it's great. And they mean it. Like you can feel that through that message. That's incredible. Those are definitely some great tips to win this war on talent, right? Very tangible that we could all take and put into place in some way for ourselves. At Keystone, we have this is another reason why I jumped right in at Keystone is we have this beautiful culture strategy intersect model, which speaks to a lot of the things that you guys are talking about. But at the top of that model is your employment brand and your customer experience. And what I love about what you have both just said is that starts on the inside. It really does. It's that energy starts on the inside. And that is what radiates out and keeps customers coming and having that good experience with the product and service that you're delivering. So another really important topic in this talent piece and in the world, right, is inclusivity. And so Kira, that's why we wanted you to be on the panel today, is to share a little bit of insights. This is it's kind of a tough and sensitive topic in some ways. We've certainly had to be more conscious in our leadership and more conscious in our cultures and our teams to really recognize and bring this forward because it is a critical piece as we move into the future and carry our people and culture forward. So share with us some things that are really good for us to focus on in 2022 and then even beyond. Take this wherever you want to go, but help us a little.
Well, this is something that I'm charged to do with day in and day out. And so I'm very passionate about it. And when we think of ourselves as leaders and as businesses, creating a culture that allows your team members to show up 100% authentically as themselves is so critical. It's critical for our culture, but it's also critical for your and my business outcomes. There's great research that says when a team member feels a sense of belonging and inclusion, their engagement and productivity go up. Now, while I believe it's the right thing to do, there's nothing wrong with having business outcomes that encourage us along the way. And the converse is also true. When someone doesn't feel like their extended dignity to be wholly who they are, their engagement goes down. They become disengaged and often leave the organization. And we know the war on talent is critical right now. So creating that culture of inclusivity when I can show up wholly as who I am and that I don't have to cover that. If I am someone who perhaps has a wife instead of a husband, if I am a Muslim, if I maybe struggle with mental health, if I have a child who might be incarcerated, being able to show up with my full identity and being honored by who I am and valued because of those differences, you're going to have an employee who gives that discretionary effort when you need that, to stay a little bit late, to go to that weekend event, whatever that looks like. And that's a win-win. And just recognizing that employee for who they are going to develop that loyalty that we need from our team members so they don't go to the competitor across the street or join another industry altogether. So it's an important or an important outcome for employers. When we don't create that, what happens is your team members and my team members feel like they have to cover. They have to hide that feeling of depression, or that maybe they're in an interracial marriage, as an example, and they're afraid to bring that person to the next holiday outing. And when they cover, it takes a lot of energy. And when I have to pretend that I don't suffer from depression, and I'm afraid that you're going to find that out, I can't freely give, again, my talents to the organization because I'm taking so much energy to protect myself. So again, when we as employers create that psychological safety and we invite our identities, the intersections of who we are into the workplace and honor them, good things happen for that employee and also for our business.
So I love that you brought up psychological safety, and I'm sure that's something that you guys all think about and talk about. And Tim, we're going to talk about safety in a minute, but it is so important today. And there's so much going on in the world. We have to keep coming back to that conscious leadership piece, so that we can do what each of you are talking about, but especially you as well. And so it's that emotional intelligence piece, that we aren't leaving our teams and our people in that fight or flight mode all the time, where then they're just emotionally hijacked, or they stay in that survival mode. And then you don't get the best out of your folks. I have to say though, something that you are all really resonating here is it starts with each of us, right? We have to be that leader who keeps it going, and we role model it, and we expect and we nourish that environment and set that environment. And we also have to admit when we've done something wrong, right? Like, here's a little egg in my face. I took this the wrong direction. And then when they do that, we can get to even more of what you were just talking about. Is that a fair statement? Kara?
It is, absolutely.
Totally. Well, thank you for that wisdom. That helps, because it can be a hard topic. It's not, it can be a really hard topic, but the leader's role is to create that environment that allows people to bring those things forward. And then we need to talk about it, right? Just like today is about having a culture conversation. Let's talk about it. Let's raise the conversation. Let's keep this going. And when we talk about things, my friend Joe in the back and I were just talking about this before the panel started, the event started, is we have to learn how to have really meaningful, rich conversations again. We got to talk more. Got to talk more and not judge. Yeah, be open and drive that. Okay, so Tim, there's a competitive advantage to all of this that we're talking about. Becky, you alluded to that a little bit, right? That you've got this whole workforce of brand advocates that are out there that can help you grow your business. And speaking of psychological safety, kind of mushing those two together, safety is critical in the energy world. Like, it's literally a decision could be catastrophic. And so it's a heavy load. I didn't mean that. How ironic. It's a heavy load. It just came out. So tell us how this culture of safety is a competitive advantage for you. And if there's any wisdom in that psych safety piece you can wrap in there too, I think that would be really good.
I missed the last part.
Oh, the psychological safety too, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, first of all, before I go there, I want to go back to Becky's comment.
Yeah.
And if you're willing to pay 10 grand to find the right candidates, I'm willing to help you. Oh, okay. Well, just call me. All right. You know, a lot of people look at the business we're in and they think it's dangerous. They think it's unsafe. And our business, if done properly, is not unsafe. However, I will say, if you don't build a culture of care, of respect, and regard, and you have leaders that are willing to look the other way and are willing to allow unnecessary risk, it can be deadly. Electricity is never going to respect us, but if you're in this business, you better give it the utmost. That being said, our employees are intimately involved in driving our organizational safety practices. They work on our policies and they work on our procedures. I actually have one of my leadership team here with me today that leads that effort along with our employees. And while safety is certainly the most important aspect of our culture, I do want to point out, I don't think you can decouple safety from your whole culture. I'm very proud that our employees have built a reputation of having a top-notch safety culture. And this is to the point where our safety steering committee gets requests to speak at various events. And they recently spoke at a national safety conference and were very well received there. And they spoke about the environment that they've cultivated and how they did that. And where this becomes really a competitive advantage is when you have skilled tradespeople out there. You mentioned we have a tight labor market. It's competitive now to get people to come. But when you have skilled tradespeople out there that will choose to work for Sioux Valley over a company that may be able to offer them more money or greater benefits, that's a competitive advantage when they look at that environment. And they choose to come to SVE because they know if they work here, they're going to be an environment in which their opinion is going to be listened to and taken into consideration when we make decisions, not only from a safety perspective, but in business practices. And they know that they're going to be part of a family. And in being part of that family, they know they're going to be in that safe environment that you talked about. And that's not only from an operational standpoint, that's from a communal standpoint. Those three words we discussed earlier, the trust, collaboration, empowerment, we try to live those every day. We're human, we fail sometimes, but we want to live those and we want our employees to live those values every day. Yeah. So that's how I see it becomes a competitive advantage. And when you have that communal trust in the organization, then as you said, then you can kind of get down to the important things when you can move past worrying about all the other peripheral.
Trust. I love it that trust came up. That's the foundation of a great company and a great leadership team. And it's the foundation of any great relationship. So I also appreciate the comment about it's not so much about how much you get paid, but it's the opportunities and the experience that the work is giving. That work is a positive experience and it contributes meaningfully to your life. You guys said this earlier too, that this little job that I'm doing right here today is just a drop in the bucket to this big, huger picture of the organization. But thank you for recognizing and valuing this piece that I do and how it matters to the big picture, because we all want to do something and be a part of something that's bigger than ourselves. That's that career well-being piece you were talking about. And so how do we keep tying that together and creating the conditions for people to just do their best and be their best, and your business as well? That's exceptional workplace culture. So I think, is there any questions from the group? Joe, you're kidding me. Joe has a question. Let's hear it, Joe. Throw it out.
Thanks, Rana. Very good. Thank you so much for wisdom and experience. Feelings. We started with feelings at the beginning. I think Kira had mentioned it, and then maybe Tim or Joe. Talk to me or give me any insights on feelings. It would seem that if we define or we have feelings as part of culture, that I want to talk around that a little bit more, because that's so fickle, right? My feelings are up, down, all right. How do feelings guide how we relate, communicate, and develop culture within the organization? And maybe the real question is, what do you mean by feelings when we talk about emotions and in the human person? Like, it seems like an interesting word to use within culture. Just get your thoughts on that, because obviously I never want to hurt anybody's feelings, but yet at the same time, I know feelings might not always be the number one priority, or are they the number one priority in dialogue, I guess?
That's great. Thanks for the loaded question, Joe. Thanks for the easy one.
You'd like to play it.
Kira's like, let me go.
Thanks for the question, Joe. I think our team members, our own feelings give us the barometer on how we're doing. they're a great way to do a gut check for me individually, but also to check in with my team. How are you feeling about this? How are you feeling supported? What's missing for you? So feelings don't have to be a scary type of thing. We're not going into this work as counselors with our colleagues. We're coaches, we're leaders, we're supporters, but it's a barometer. And giving folks space to let you know how they are feeling about their work as your team member, for you to give yourself space as a leader to get in touch with, how are you feeling? I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling exasperated. I'm feeling energized. It really helps us see what's working and what isn't. So creating a space for that type of feedback is okay. And we don't need to get uncomfortable with feelings, because again, they're a great barometer to measure culture and how we're feeling about coming to work, how we're feeling about our team, how we're feeling about being tied to the purpose or not feeling those things. So I would invite you to think of it as a good barometer, as data to capture for decision-making going forward.
Yeah, that emotional intelligence piece is what you're speaking to. And then also having a level of emotional literacy. Awesome. Who wants to add?
You know, and I guess I want to be the counterpoint to that, because thanks for the planted question. But you're kind of getting into the psychology of a culture there, and it could be a pretty deep discussion. You know, I think feelings is probably the place we get it wrong most often. Because while we try to do things that well, first let's say, you know, as looking at the psychology of it, as humans, we're not all really good at sharing our feelings. And I think it's been proven over time, men are probably far worse than women at sharing their feelings. You know, so for me to come in and tell you how I'm really feeling about something, I think there's different levels of trust within an organization. I may be willing to come in and share that with my leadership team, the team I work directly with. I may be willing to share it with one member of my team that I feel connected to on a certain topic. But I think as humans, we probably do, in general, a poor job of really sharing how we feel, because we don't want to offend somebody. We don't want to be a bother, you know, so we kind of go along at times, you know, as you're trying to develop various aspects of your culture and you're trying to develop people. You know, at times what I find is I thought I've been doing a really good thing, and I find out I've got like a whole group of employees that are really ticked off at me, and I didn't understand that or why. And then you start trying to dig in to really figure out or understand why I got it so wrong, you know? So, well, I think I absolutely agree with what Kira said. I think the flip side of that is I think feelings is where we mess it up the most sometimes.
Yeah. Okay. Becky or Joe, anything you want to add?
Well, I'll just say, you know, most of the time when you have conversations with employees and the leaders are having conversations, it's very much so about the position, the job, the tasks at hand. When I was doing these one-on-ones that I mentioned, I was there really only to hear their feelings, their opinions about their position, the company, where they felt things were headed, what was making them nervous, our growth, that was scaring them. But it was just allowing them the outlet that I'm just here to let you talk and I really care about what you're going to say. And this conversation's just between you and I, and I'm not going to judge you for anything that's happening here. This is just between you and I. And it's that trust that they had, you know, to share that. And I knew going into those conversations, if I mess this up, they are all going to talk and then no one's going to talk to me anymore. And so I really had to be careful with that. But really, it was just creating that outlet. And I had so many of them say, thank you. This is so awesome that you just want to know how I'm feeling and what I think and hearing my opinion. So that's my thoughts.
That's awesome.
Feelings.
This week I was with a group, and as we were closing out a session, one of the leaders said, I think leadership team, we need to keep thinking about this. No one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And you just we all just sort of encapsulated that a little bit. Yeah. We got time for one more question. A quick one. Anybody got something? Mike.
So you can't look at the media today and not hear about the Great Resignation. I saw a number yesterday. More people either left their jobs or changed jobs in the last year than have ever been recorded since they started tracking these numbers back in the late 90s. What have you guys done in your organizations? Have you had to do any course adjustments over the last year to kind of deal with that situation and this great resignation we talk about?
Yeah. Well, I think to help in that, you know, Joe and Becky both shared a little bit of how you're making that magic kind of happen, but what else might you guys add?
I think it's certainly a real risk that faces every company, right? Big, small, doesn't matter. Kira and I were talking a little bit before the event started that, you know, every business is impacted by COVID differently. And I think some of the byproducts of the things that have been shifting in the business world the last couple of years is the idea that there was a big pendulum swing to have people work from home. And then that's certainly swinging back. And as Kira mentioned to me earlier, they're looking at doing some kind of a hybrid. I think one of the things that, to speak to your point about what are we doing, we're trying to meet people where our team where they're at with mindful consciousness of we still have a business to run, right? And so I think one of the biggest risks for a company like mine is companies that we never had to worry about trying to steal our talent because they are in Missouri or Florida or Massachusetts. Now we're worrying about them, right? Because they don't have a culture. They're just trying to fill seats. And so that's risky for us. So we're trying to work with our team, be flexible, but we still need to have people in the office because the quickest thing to erode culture is people don't show up to sustain the culture. And people can't be loyal to coworkers that they never see, and they can't be loyal to a company that they don't ever go to, right? So there's an erosion that's going on. I think the mass exodus or the resignation that you referenced, I think that's just the early stages of it. And I think it's time to double down on culture because that's going to be the only thing that keeps people.
Say something real quick. So I'm going to say this, you know, I was talking about all the things that we've been doing and we started years ago and it's paid off. Last year, our biggest growth year employee-wise, employee headcount added tons of new positions and our turnover is down in this time when all this was going on. And I think so much of it just has to do with it's not one thing. And I think so many people think it's one thing. Like, what's the one thing that we can do? You have to be working on it. I mean, intentionally and just really be authentic. I think that's so much of it is just be so authentic.
Yes. And I think we've nailed that in all of our discussions, actually. Be deliberate, be intentional, and be authentic. Wow, what a great conversation. Thank you all for sharing so much of your wisdom and your insights, and especially your time to share and to give. And a huge thank you to Eric and to Southeast Tech. What a great partnership that we've kind of created here. Let's keep these events going. So the fall one's already underway, but let's give a huge round of applause to Southeast and to our. Great. So we can't thank you enough for all of this. And part of this, like I said, is the give, right? Keystone wants to be a give. So the fall event is being planned and it's about the future of work. And for those of you that are here today and all of our virtual friends, the give is an hour of my time to consult with you as a compliment. So if that's of interest to you, please let me know right away. Thank you all for your time and your energy and the commitment that you make as leaders to your people and to our community. And by community, I mean our whole state, right? It's our whole state. Well, let this be a way to have a rockin' good Thursday to lead into an amazing Friday and a beautiful weekend where my husband and I are going to go to some middle school state wrestling. Awesome. Thank you, everybody.
So nice.
You know, I get to see what it
Still on your monthly.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no doubt.
That's great.
Thank you so much.
Interview. Oh, I see. Really shitty. Like a.
Oh, yeah.
You're in